Good evening, everyone. It's my greatest pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Pune International Center and Berkeley Institute of Politics and Economics to this wonderful session. I believe this would be perhaps one of the only book publications which is simultaneously going to publish it in 8, 9 different languages. So, please, a big round of applause for that. And I have the greatest privilege of standing here on the dais and introducing some of the most illustrious people in the country today. I would like to start with Professor Madhav Gadgil. He doesn't need an introduction in any case, but still a couple of things which you probably do not know. So Professor Gadgil established the Center for Ecological Sciences at the Indian Institute of Science. He's been a visiting professor at some of the best universities in the country, at Stanford, at University of California, Berkeley. But more importantly, what is not known in his work is that as a member of the Scientific Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India, he played a seminal role in establishing the first biosphere reserve of the country, the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. After that, the government went on to declare the other biosphere reserves of the country. Another thing which is not well known about him is that in 1980, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi invited him along with others to think about, to conceive of the Department of Environment. At that time it was not the ministry, and today it is now known as the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, MOEFCC. But at that time it was a mandate to conceive how the Department of Environment for a country like India should be established. So after the initial meeting, Professor Gadgil and Professor Kailash Malhotra, the two of them traveled throughout the country in railways, talking to people who have been associated with the natural resource economy, tribals, people who have been displaced from dams and development works, and they formulated a plan, and that went on to become what is today the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So that's another first for him, which needs to be done. Of course, he is most popularly known as the author and leading the team of the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel, which was another seminal work on the natural resources of the Western Ghats, as well as how the livelihoods have been intertwined with the consumption of natural resources, how people have conserved them for generations in a manner of social fencing without any elaborate rules and laws. He established all of that. He also wrote down the challenges, the threats, the impending threats as India's economy is going to grow, and they together prepared the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel report, and we all know what happened to the fate of that report. It was highly debated, but unfortunately it did not. Professor Gadgil's work was recognized by no less than the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, which is considered to be one of the highest prizes that one could get in the environmental sector. So that's about him. I'm sure he must be pleased to be sitting in an institute which adorns his father's name. His father has been the director here, and the library is named Dhananjay Rao Gadgil Library. Is in his father's name. His grandfather's photograph also adorns this very hall. It's now it's gone behind the screen. That's Professor Gadgil for you, and of course you will get to know many more things when Professor Guha has his conversation with him. We have with us Professor Ramchandra Guha, a renowned historian, environmentalist, author, who has made significant contributions to India's history. He's also well known as a cricket fan and a critic of cricket. He's been talking and also writing about cricket in a big way. Professor Guha is well known as an author, but he's also been an eminent chair professor at the London School of Economics, at the University of California, Berkeley, and the University of Oslo. Besides being a visiting professor at the Indian Institute of Science, Stanford, Yale, among other things, and also a lot of universities in India. All his books have done extremely well, but the one I want to pick up is India After Gandhi. That singular book made it to the yearbook of lists at The Economist, the Wall Street Journal, the Outlook, and was also awarded the Sahitya Akademi Award for English Literature. with Professor Gadgil, he has authored this Fissured Land, which is a brilliant work on the uh, environmental history of India, and especially how tribals have been living to it and what has happened after that. And the second book, which is Ecology and Equity, which I also mandate as a compulsory reading to my students. Both the books are. So that's Ramchandra Guha. We're honored to have you here, sir. Dr. Vijay Kelkar, another person in Pune who doesn't need any introduction. So, Dr. Vijay Kelkar is one of India's renowned economists. Among his various positions, he's been the chairman of the National Stock Exchange of India, he was the chairman of the CSIR, president of the Indian Statistical Institute, chairman of the Finance Commission, and an advisor to the finance minister. I will stop at that because there's a huge list and then we will end up looking at so many other positions he has. He was also the executive director of the International Monetary Fund for India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. His invaluable contribution to India's reforms was recognized when he was awarded the Padma Vibhushan in 2011. So we have two Padma awardees on the stage. And I'm sorry, three Padma awardees on the stage. I forgot to mention and of course, Professor Kelkar is also the trustee of the Pune International Center. Dr. Ajit Ranade, my boss, is the Vice Chancellor of the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, is a noted economist in India. Before he moved to full-time to academia, he was, how do you say that? You were an absconding, hitchhiking academician, because he spent most of his career, about 32 years he spent in the corporate world. He was the chief economist of the Birla Group, and he was a visiting professor at several universities abroad as well as India. But then finally he decided to move into Gokhale Institute here. So Dr. Rande has already taught in several reputed industries and universities in India. He has served as a member of several committees of the Reserve Bank of India and as a member of the Apex Committee of CII and FICCI, two of the apex bodies of Indian industry. He's also been a member of the Economic Task Force for the post-COVID economic recovery of the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. And in his recently started career at Gokhale Institute, he's made a lot of innovative practices as part of the academic curriculum, and I'm sure that in the coming years we'll see a lot of good things happening at the Gokhale Institute. So that's about the introduction of the four eminent people who are sitting on the dais. We will now request Dr. Ajit Ranade to have a short welcome speech.
Can you please give a round of applause to Dr. Guha? Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon to all of you. Since we heard about Padma, there are a lot of youngsters here. If you don't mind doing some Padmasan, please come. There's plenty of space up in the front. Or you can do Padmasan also. But please come and occupy this space. We are used to having a crowd which is allowed or standing room only, but we don't mind if you come, especially the youngsters. And if you make space, then some of the chairs can be occupied with some of our slightly older people in the audience. So please be considerate and come and sit up here in the front. You can come on the stage also. I'm sure the speaker will not mind. So I want to begin by especially welcoming Professor Sulochana Gadgil, wife of our chief guest. And of course, the children of Professor Madhav Gadgil, Siddharth and Gauri. Simply, I'm just delighted and humbled and overwhelmed by the occasion today that we have Professor Madhav Gadgil launching his autobiography in 9 languages, right? 9 languages at a place which is closely associated with him, his father, and indeed I would say his family. So it's quite a very momentous occasion. I want to also say that, of course, my colleague Dr. Gurudas has said already quite a few things, and through the conversation with Professor Guha, you will get to know more about him. Professor Gadgil, Madhav Gadgil, and also Professor Sulochana Gadgil, I think they are what I consider the tradition, as we spoke of the great, without sounding too parochial about it, the great Maharashtrian tradition of pursuit of knowledge along with special concern, empathy for development and social welfare. It's not knowledge for the sake of knowledge alone, which of course is high scholarship and priesthood, but this is knowledge, pursuit of knowledge for the sake of social benefit, social welfare. And this is exemplified in his life, I think, by the huge amount of involvement, engagement, and deep, sort of embracing of the field work approach to work. So of course you know him as an environmentalist, as a naturalist, as a ecological scientist. But I think probably what you come to know through the conversation is that he has been an inveterate and amazing amount of field worker, and I'm told that there is no part of India which Professor Madhav Gadgil has not visited. So it's really, and that is a tradition. I think we are very proud, sir. So knowledge which feeds on actual field work and field work which feeds on knowledge. And that's a tradition I'm proud to say is also pioneered by Gokhale Institute from the very early days. Much of the work which has been done at Gokhale Institute, whether it's the early work on cooperatives or on employment guarantee scheme, estimation of poverty, impact evaluation, district level studies, demographic studies, all of them have been imbued with field work and empirical research. So I think we owe some of this to maybe you or your father as well. So it's really a great thing to see you here. I want, if you give a mic to a professor, you can go on and on, but I'm very conscious that I should stick to 5 minutes. But I do want to mention one incident which struck me personally. In his book, he says, in the early part of the book, you're talking about your father, and your father was a member of the Irrigation Commission, the Maharashtra Irrigation Commission, and was involved in the very first the construction of Koyna Dam, right? And he says that what happens with the dam, I mean this issue is there with us even today, is that people get affected. The project affected people. So he says that at dinner, I'm quoting from the book, but when we had dinner together after the Irrigation Commission meeting on Koyna, he was distraught. He, meaning his father, was distraught. And for the first time in my experience, that is Madhav Gadgil's experience, even depressed. His father was depressed. So he said to Madhav, I believe that we need electricity. We need dams for electricity and irrigation. So Madhav, we need electricity to drive industrial progress. But surely we should not be paying these environmental costs and social costs. This is how at the age of 14, I became dramatically aware of the environmental and development conundrum. So this is, that has probably defined the work of Madhav Gadgil. I wanted to mention this little small paragraph in the book because later on, just a few lines later, you mentioned that the famous Panchet Dam, which broke, and Khadakwasla also. I don't know how many of you remember Panchet Dam, Panchet Sapur. We have a lot of people here. And what happened is that he talks about Panchet Sapur, that the Pune city was flooded, and Madhav Gadgil mentions that actually they had an 8-hour advance warning, but there was nothing conveyed to the people of Pune. And I mentioned Panchet Dam because there was a 2-month-old baby, 3-month-old baby, whose mother had brought him from the lowlands of Mumbai to enjoy the salubrious climate of Pune, to be then totally stranded because of the Panchet Dam. That baby is standing here today. So, the environmental impact of irrigation and dams was felt by a small 2-month baby. I hope I'm carrying it. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and I'm delighted all of you are here, and a special welcome to our guests. Thank you very much.
It is now time for the ceremonial publication of the singular publication of the autobiography in English and 8 other languages. So may I now request the translators to please come up on the dais. So we have the 8 translators here. we now come to the point where I think which has pulled the biggest crowd here is the conversation between Professor Ramchandra Guha and Professor Madhav Gadgil. We will need to rearrange the stage. Just give us a couple of minutes, please.
Good evening, everyone. We are here to celebrate the release of this wonderful autobiography in English and in 9 other languages. A Walk Up the Hill, Living with People and Nature by Professor Madhav Gadgil. But this is what the event is about. This is what our conversation was to be about Madhav's book. But allow me to begin with 2 paragraphs I wrote a quarter of a century ago in the Economic and Political Weekly about another scholar named Gadgil. So I'm going to begin with 2 paragraphs of my own. And I claim your indulgence. So I'm going to begin with 2 paragraphs I wrote in the EPW about another scholar called Gadgil, and the relevance of those 2 paragraphs to this evening will become apparent as we go along. So here is what I wrote. D.R. Gadgil was an intellectual of rare ability and self-confidence. The range of his own research was impressive. At various times, he did important work on planning, economic history, and the sociology of business communities. His instincts and orientation were interdisciplinary before that term became fashionable. Likewise, he was a public intellectual before public intellectualism. He was one of the founders of the cooperative movement in Maharashtra. He was not lacking in courage either. Once he even took on Mahatma Gandhi. And then there's a description of how in 1946, D.R. Gadgil and a very upright civil servant called A.D. Gorwala chaired a committee on food rationing whose conclusions upset Gandhi, who did not believe in food rationing, even in a time of scarcity. Okay, so could you hear the paragraph? You want to read it out again? So then, in that article, I quote a tribute to D.R. Gadgil by the well-known journalist D.F. Karaka, who says, a slim, gaunt man, argumentative and aggressive on the right occasions, full of courage and with a wisdom grounded in deep knowledge of both theory and facts, Gadgil had devoted himself for many years to the building up of a true school of politics and economics, eschewing all profitable pursuit. On occasion after occasion, he had turned down offers of employment by the government. And then Karaka describes his D.R. Gadgil's disagreement with Mahatma Gandhi. Now, just look at the parallels with Madhav Gadgil's own career. The interdisciplinary approach, which Ajit has briefly mentioned and we will talk a little bit about, his public spiritedness, his institution building, in this case the Center for Ecological Sciences at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, his quiet courage, and his ability to take on powerful political and vested interests. So I thought we'll begin our conversation with my asking Madhav to trace the influence of his parents on him, not just his father, but also his mother.
Well, is that loud enough?
Yeah.
Okay. My father, as of course Ajit Ranade also read out the paragraph, was both very interested in nature, in birds, and in the hills around. He was a lover of nature, but at the same time, unlike, I am afraid, many nature lovers, at least the urban nature lovers of India, he did not believe that it is the people of India who are destroying the natural world. That he had great sympathy for and worked with the farmers, the horticulturists, many other communities at the ground level, especially in the development of the cooperative movement. And my early memories with him, maybe 3-4-year-old, are going up the hills, very close to here where we are sitting now, watching birds. And he was a good friend of Salim Ali's, and we carry Salim Ali's Book of Indian Birds and a pair of binoculars. And before actually I could read, I wasn't forced to read at an any early age. That before 5 years I didn't do any reading at all. I was recognizing birds by looking at Salim Ali's bird pictures. Same time, around the same time it must be, that he was involved in establishment along with the farmer leaders, especially Vikrama Viket Patil, Nagar Sugar Factory, which actually started functioning when I was only 7 years old. And at the age of 5-6 must be, I went with him to the Ahmednagar district, and he visited many farmers, and we sat down on the ground having lunch with them. So he was a man, as I said, who had both great love for natural work and great sympathy for people of India and love for people of India. Secondly, just to mention, as you mentioned, my mother, it was remarkable that at that time, this is 1940s, late 1940s, she was already very staunchly against the caste system, as was my father. And my father perhaps had thought through, well, definitely had thought through this. It is not as if his family had advocated being against caste, but as far as my mother was concerned, her father was my maternal grandfather was a follower of Prarthana Samaj, which had rejected caste. So she was also very staunchly against caste, and in general, all kind of religious and caste-related other communal distinctions. So both my father and mother had this. I imbibed certainly that also from them.
So, you know, you told me a story many years ago, which is not in your autobiography. But I'm going to tell it for the benefit of the audience. So, Madhav grew up in Pune. Madhav grew up in Pune. He was born in 1942. His father worked in the Gadgil Institute. He studied in Pune. He did his first degree in Pune. At some stage, maybe when he was in high school, this incident happened, which he told me about many years later. Like I said, maybe in 1958 or 59. And the great economist Vasily Leontiev was visiting Pune, you know, the founder of input-output analysis, and one of the economists who got the Nobel Prize, and there is no dispute about whether he deserved the Nobel Prize, unlike some other economists got it. He was a great economist of the 20th century, and he was staying with his friend Dhananjay Gadgil, the distinguished Indian economist, and he saw this young boy, his host son, and he asked him, "Young man, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And Madhav replied, "Sir, I want to become a biologist." At which point, Professor Leontiev said, "Very good. Never take up your father's profession, especially if your father is good at what he does." Now, I mean, it's relevant to many people in India today, right?
Can you repeat it? What's the...
Yeah, he said, so Leontiev asked this young boy, "What do you want to become when you grow up?" And this 15 or 16-year-old said, "Sir, I want to become a biologist." So Leontiev said, "That's very good. Never do what your father does, especially if your father is good at what he does." Okay, now, What made you want to become a biologist? I mean, how did you choose this profession, which is of course different from your father's, but which you made your own?
Okay, okay. It was just, as I said, I grew up very fond of natural world and the birds and the beasts around. Uh, so very naturally, I thought that this is one of the, and like I said, I was looking at Salim Ali's book, and my father was a personal friend of Salim Ali. So there was one particular incident which triggered my becoming a biologist. The green beet, which is one of the most attractive birds around. And those pre-pesticide days, there were large flocks of bee eaters which would be sitting on the electric wires around our house. I was observing them, and when I was 1956 or so, I noticed that the long pin feather was missing from the tails of the green bee eaters. So I asked my father, so he didn't know, and he had apart from Salim Ali's book, he had a very good collection of books on including Indian birds. So we looked at them, my father and I looked at them, but couldn't find an answer. He said, write to Salim Ali. So I wrote a letter to Salim Ali asking, why is it that this is this a different species which migrated here by chance? So in just 3 days, I got an answer, which Salim Ali had a very elegant handwriting, saying that at certain time of the year, birds molt, the weathers are renewed. At that time, for a while, this pink feather would be missing, but it will grow back. And it grew back, of course, a month later. Salim Ali was engaged in studying the Maya weaver bird. That was one of his very favorite subjects. And there was large colonies of Maya weaver bird near Parvati Hills here, along the canal. And he used to come to study those birds. So the next time he was coming in 56, I wrote a letter to him and said that, can I meet you? And I met him, and he completely overwhelmed me with his charm, with his knowledge, and with his wit also. He was a great, very witty man. And I said that, this is what I should do. And I used to read, and there was this very interesting book by the distinguished biologist Julian Huxley, Bird Watching and Bird Behavior, in which he says that if you get to know natural world, then you are never without a friend anywhere, even if there are no human beings around, because you are always, you plants and the birds and the insects. So I said, well, this sounds very attractive. And my father, like I guess almost all other fathers at that time, did want their sons to become engineers or doctors, or if not, at least IAS. And he had no such ambition for me. I had enough brains to, I guess, manage any of that. And he said, fine, you are convinced that you want to become a biologist and maybe even a field biologist like Salim Ali, go ahead, enjoy yourself.
So, then Madhav goes to, from his first degree in Pune, he goes to Mumbai, and he does a master's degree in science, specializing in fisheries, interestingly. And then, of course, he comes back and he gets a scholarship to Harvard, and he marries Surushna before he goes to Harvard. Tell us a little bit about that. It was quite interesting how the process by which you found your wife, and how she found you. Yeah.
Well, Inavati Karve was our neighbor, and her son Anand and my elder brother Purushottam were of the same age, and both had studied abroad. Both had been both did their PhD. Anand Karve in one of the universities in Germany, and my brother, elder brother Purushottam at Cambridge University. And both of them had, just around the time I was talking about applying to Harvard, married. Anand Karve, a German girl, and my brother, a British girl. So my mother was very worried. She said, look, I do not want another foreign bride. You can marry any girl. And she really was very free. She said she could be a Muslim, one of Salim Ali's relatives, friends of ours. Or I was very fond of sports, and I was a good athlete, and I had friends who were hockey players on Ferguson College playground. In the evening, I did jumps, and then we played hockey. And the girls used to play hockey. And there was this Jewish girl, Rita Naugaonkar, who was the captain of Ferguson College girls hockey team. So I used to describe how attractive she was. So my mother said, okay, you want to marry Rita Naugaonkar, then you marry her. I said, no, actually I was in the athletics team. With our athletics team, we used to travel all over, including in the other parts of India, member teams. And there were some very attractive girls in the athletics team. But as far as I could figure out, they were not very brainy. So I said, I really am not, I want a wife who has brains. I don't want somebody who would be interested in, I want to take up science profession. So somebody would be bright enough to maybe also take up science as a profession. And who is that? I said, but I don't know her personally. I know other girls in Ferguson College, but I am not particularly fond of any of them. And she is Suratana. Now, of course, Silochana Patak. So my mother was a go-getter. She said, fine. I know Sulochana's mother, so she picked up the phone and phoned her. Sulochana's mother was taken aback because, in those days, at least maybe even now, the boys' parents may send some words so that the girls' parents would make proposal. She said nothing of that sort in her head. So there was this annual magazine of Ferguson College. And on one of the pages was a photograph of Sulochana and me side by side as scholarship holders of having our whatever scholastic achievements. And on another page was a picture of me as captain of the athletics team, in the college athletics team. So she picked up this magazine, took it to Sulochana's mother, showed her. So here is my boy's photo next to your daughter. And also on another page, you will see maybe a different elegant blazer and so on. So what do you think? So she was, as I said, taken aback, but then she said, I have to ask my husband. Her father, Dr. Y.V. Patak, was a distinguished physician, and we will get back to it. She got back very shortly. My father was delighted because actually Sulochana's grandfather, V.D. Patak, was a part of the freedom struggle, and he was famous in Pune for his wit and his penetrating eyes and so on. Anyway, my father said, if she is V.D. Patak's granddaughter? I said, yes, sir. She said, then she must be a wonderful girl. So,
Lovely. So, I hope in this conversation we'll be able to cover only a little bit of what's going on. So, there's lots I won't talk about, so please get this book. One of the things I will not talk about is Sulochana and Madhav going to America, where they both got their PhDs at Harvard. in mathematics and ecology. And there's a fascinating discussion in Madhav's autobiography of the scientific culture at Harvard, including the ecology department. And it's interesting to read Madhav's description in juxtaposition with the description in E.O. Wilson's autobiography, Naturalist. And there's some overlap and some differences because, ecology at that time was becoming increasingly lab-driven. Field work was regarded as archaic, old-fashioned, backward, what natural history historians did. And so Madhav talks about all of that. And so I'm going to skip over all of that, but please read it to the autobiography. And then Sulochana gets her PhD. They come back. They work first in Pune. And Sulochana has already started working on climate science and meteorology, and eventually, of course, becomes one of our most distinguished climate scientists. And they're in Pune for a bit, and then they are both offered jobs at the Indian Institute of Science, at a newly set up Center for Theoretical Study. Now, I want Madhav to talk a little bit about how Sulochana he came to the IISc. Because of what it meant to him and Sulochana, because of what their work meant to the IISc, because of also its oddly topical. We've heard a lot about Chandrayaan and ISRO, and in all of that we haven't heard very much about the history of ISRO. Because, maybe history begins in 2014 for some people. But it's important, this is related to Madhav's story. But ISRO was started in the 60s by Vikram Sarabhai, who was an extraordinary visionary physicist, who died suddenly of a heart attack in his early 50s. And ISRO was left headless. At that stage, Satish Dhawan, who was already the director of Institute of Science, was on a sabbatical at Stanford. And Indira Gandhi, on the advice of her advisors, rang him up and said, "Will you take over ISRO?" And he said, on two conditions. When I come back from Stanford, two conditions. One, I will continue as director of Institute of Science. And the second condition, which is actually maybe, both conditions, second condition may be even more important to the future of ISRO, you will shift the headquarters to Bangalore. Now, that happened, and Dhawan was, he was an extraordinary man. I wrote a tribute to him on his centenary, Google and find, Dhawan the institution, not so much Dhawan the engineer. But he was without question the most influential and important chairperson of ISRO, and without question the most dynamic and fast-seeing director of Indian Institute of Science. So you think of the public sector organization which we all admire most of all, there's Dhawan behind it. If you think of the research institute most of us admire most of all, there's Dhawan behind it. So tell us a little bit about, because I think, talent spotting is a very rare act among Indians. And many Indians don't recognize talent among young people. How did Dhawan headhunt the two of you and take you to Bangalore?
Oh, okay. So Dhawan interested because of his interest in aeronautics of hiring somebody who was well qualified in atmospheric sciences, oceanic sciences, that area, and he was told by Ishorati actually, anyway, one of the more senior meteorologists, and that Sulochana had just returned with a degree in that field from Harvard, and she would be a very good choice. So she wrote to her, asking if she would be interested. So she said, "I am definitely interested, but it so happens that my husband also has a PhD from Harvard, and it is in the area of mathematical ecology." So Dhawan promptly wrote back saying that we are thinking of establishing a multidisciplinary center for theoretical studies, headed by ECG Sudarshan, a very distinguished physicist, where Madhav would decidedly fit in. So let him apply. So I also applied, and Dharmat was very gracious person, so he invited us to come to Indian Institute of Science. He put us up in the guest house and arranged for our two seminars. There were no interviews, there were job seminars given, and Dharmat himself, of course, was there. But the most distinguished scientists from Raman Research Institute in Bangalore and others, he invited all of them to come and went the two of us. And both, we were both, so to say, given very high grades by this group of scientists that Dhawan consulted. So the same evening, in fact, he invited us to his house, bungalow on campus for dinner, and again very graciously said, I will offer both of you assistant professorship. So we were delighted and joined together. And the question was that time whether husband and wife should be both given jobs. So he said, look, what God has put together, Lord, no man, whatever put asunder, and they are both good, so both should be given the job, said he. Gave us both jobs.
So, Madhav and Sushna spent after their entire professional career at the IISc, and they both helped establish centers. The Center for Atmospheric Sciences in the case of Sushna, and the Center for Ecological Sciences in the case of Madhav. I think the first, certainly with ecology, the first center. And while coming in here, I first, if I may inject a personal note, I started a PhD in Calcutta in 1980. And I met Madhav in 1982, and of course we've been friends and collaborators ever since. And I used to visit CTS as it was then, Center for Theoretical Studies, in the summer and work with Madhav. And then started the Center of Ecological Sciences, and it's wonderful. I mean, coming in, I saw some of your fabulous PhD students here who are now, distinguished scientists themselves. I mean, there's Harini Nagendran, there's Silanjan Bhattacharya, there's R. Prabhakar, there may be others here. And so just tell us a little bit about your, about 35 years at the IISc? 33. Because I mean, I'm not entirely unbiased, because my father has a PhD from the IISc, and I was the visiting professor there. But even so, I think there's a special character to that place. I mean, it's maintained standards of quality and research and curiosity and critical inquiry, and a relative lack of politics, not a complete lack of politics, but a relative lack of academic politics and pettiness and jealousy. What really contributes to the culture that IISc has had?
I believe it was really Satish Jawan, because he was the director of that institute for a long period, something like 14 years or so. And he set the tone. He was genuinely a man who recognized and rewarded merit. And he was also genuinely a man who had no embarrassment about or no wish to cultivate political favor. So he did invite, at that time, Medha Patkar, Narmada Bachao Andolan, to come and give a talk in IISc, because he felt that she had to say something which was worthwhile. Now, this was very rare quality. I don't think there would be many others who would be heading a major institute who would have dared to, or maybe no other person, call her to give a talk there. When the question came up about the environmental impacts of various projects, space projects, that time there was no formal requirement at all. But when they set up this rocket center at Sriharikota Island, he invited Salim Ali to make a report on that. And then later he asked me to give a report on the facility they set up near Kayyar in Kerala. And he said his subordinates objected, why do you want to do this, and they may give some recommendations which are embarrassing, we don't want. He said, no, I would go ahead and take those on board. And in fact, actually, as far as I know, and as far as that Shreyakota also knows, he did take Salim Ali's recommendations and my recommendations about the traffic launching site in Kerala seriously and made some changes and went ahead. So he was a man genuinely committed to social cause, social interests, and completely fearless.
Incidentally, Dhawan was born in pre-partition, and he took his first degrees in Government College Lahore. And he had a degree in engineering and a degree in literature. So that shows the kind of range of interest he already had. Then he did a PhD in Stanford later. You know, I want to move on now, Madhav, to something that Ajit Ranade mentioned. Your penchant for fieldwork and your deep engagement with rural communities. You know, I think that's quite striking. I mean, Madhav will recall that I wrote an essay about him about 15 years ago, where I praised his work, and I ended with a complaint. I said, Madhav has so much to write based on all his life's work, but if you tell him, if you give him a choice, spend a week writing or spend a week doing field work in Manipur, he will go off to Manipur. Right, and I'm glad he's written this book. You know, so at some stage his field work has come to an end. But it's extraordinary the range of field experiences he's had. And the collaborators. I mean, when he came back from Harvard and he spent a year or a bit in Pune, he did some very interesting research with his teacher Vartak, Vili Vartak, on sacred groves in Maharashtra. Later on, with another collaborator, the anthropologist Kailash Malhotra, incidentally a student of Veeramati Karve, they did fascinating work among pastoralists, among Dangars. And then he's been in, you know, in the Himalaya, he's been in Manipur with a student, he's been in Goa. And just tell us a little bit about one or two of memorable field experiences, not about the Western Ghats, because I'll come to the Western Ghats later. So maybe Himalaya or Churachandpur or something. Yeah, maybe Churachandpur because you've been there also. Churachandpur, you've been there also.
Yeah. So the Himalayas, I had the privilege of getting to know Chandi Prasad Bhatt. Perhaps Gurudas mentioned that in 1980, to set up this Department of Environment, Indira Gandhi wanted, she had set up a committee, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan was chairing it, and she wanted the committee to come up with what should be done. And I was a member of that committee, and I proposed that apart from other whatever activities the committee will undertake, we must get a feedback from the ground level about what they have perceived, they perceive as environmental issues and what they think should be the proper measures. So the committee agreed, and then we had a month and a little more than that to undertake this study. And Kailash Malhotra, as you mentioned, he, of course, a wonderful companion and a field anthropologist. I proposed that he should be on as a part of this study, and they agreed. So Kailash and I toured all over. One of the areas we were interested in was Garhwal, Himalayas, where there were a whole set of environmental issues, obviously. And Sundarlal Bahuguna and Chandi Prasad Bhatt were the two active leaders of that. So because of that, I got to know Chandi Prasad Bhatt. And Chandi Prasad Bhatt invited me to one of his eco-development camps. In fact, on the way to that eco-development camp, I met you at Dehradun. And at that camp, what I saw was remarkable. That Chandi Prasad Bhatt's father was a priest in the local Shiva temple, but he had no kind of prejudice again about caste or any such. And every evening we would sit together. I would be an observer on the ground there. People of all castes, there were no other than Hindus, I guess, there, but people of all castes equally participating in the discussion, and he would invite experts also, some of the teachers of physics, for instance, from uh, Gadgil University. So one of the topics was to tap water power through micro-hydel projects. And I remember that discussion that the stone masons who fashioned the older stone water wheels, they participated and they contributed their understanding, as did this physics professor from Gadgil College, water college, who had a good understanding of these energy issues, and other equal platform. And through the camps, planning what is to be done next, and everybody's input was taken. And later I read this book about the Kaizen system of the Japanese Toyota and other companies. So this was really what was being done. That everybody involved, their input was being taken, and things moving ahead. And later I had continued the interaction with Chandi Prasad, even till today, though I have not met him recently, but his son Prakash Bhatt, I am in regular touch with. Now, he was a remarkable man. As I mentioned in my book, I have had, apart from my father and Hiranti Karve, the 4 other gurus were very distinguished people I have been lucky in. One was Salim Ali, second is Edward Wilson at Harvard, third was Chandi Prasad Bhatt to me, and the fourth was the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad and K. Prasad. So we came in touch and I learned so much from Chandi Prasad.
So, I mean, I also have my pantheon of 4 or 5 people who inspired me. Chandi Prasad ji is certainly one of them. By the way, since there are lots of ecologists and naturalists here, Chandi Prasad Bhatt's own autobiography appeared in Hindi last year. It's being translated in English, and it should appear early in 2024. So look out for that too. Now, Madhav, I have 2 or 3 questions, and then we should conclude. But just reflecting on your life and your work, I think the 2 and I have to say the 2 most important relationships in your life. One is with the person, Sulochana, which you talked about, and the other is with the mountain range. The Western Ghats. He's had a lifelong love affair. And, I've known Madhav 40 years. We worked very closely together. We've, had, this is our first public conversation in Pune, but we have meetings in many different parts of India and the world. And one of my most memorable experiences of Madhav was at the Center for Ecological Sciences. I went, in probably the late 90s. And in the corridor, this is the old building, now they're in a new building. In the corridor, there were lots of photographs, framed photographs. These photographs had been taken by a remarkable botanist called Father Cecil Saldana, who taught for many years at St. Lutheran's College and was a friend of Madhav's and of mine. And he was doing an exhibition on his photographs. And all these photographs were lined up on the corridor before they were going to be framed. And there were must have been 40, 50 of them. And I called Madhav out of the room. And I said, Madhav, identify each one of these. And I looked at it and said, that is just below, that's a forest just below that village, that KM Hector of the Saya, the Parisi of Vartana, he stays there. That river is the Sharavati, it's just below that temple. That, and he identified every one of them. He gave me a tour of fathers with no captions. So I think this is a kind of extraordinarily intimate knowledge he has about the Western Ghats. And we know about his Western Ghat report. We know that politicians are not keen to implement it. But one of the most extraordinary tributes I think any scientist has ever got is that Madhav's autobiography has been translated more or less in every language spoken in the Western Ghats. Is that correct?
Western Ghats
And Hindi also.
some Bengali.
So, this is your, as I said, would I be fair to say these are the two most important relationships of your life with your wife and with the Western Ghats?
Certainly, I mean, as I mentioned, my father was very fond of the hills and trekking on them. And from an early age, I mean, apart from the hill very close to our house, which is just here, though, this Vetar Hills, we would go to many other places, like Sihagar. And that time there were no roads or anything, you had to walk up. And Lukama and Tirak had a bungalow where friends from the family, the friends of the family would be given half the bungalow to stay for some time. So regularly we would spend 2 weeks every summer there, and then we will go to many other Palhara, so many hills of Western Ghats. We would always go for vacations, Mahabaleshwar, and from an early age I have been wandering, on these hills, and I guess, as I said, from the very early age, I really enjoyed going up and down the hills. And of course, as a good Maharashtrian, uh, we are all very proud of the history and Shivaji, who is the great hero for Maharashtrians, and all his forts. And we went to actually many of those forts also. So with all that, I was really fascinated by these hills. And then when I moved to Bangalore, I also spent a lot of time in the Uttar Kannada district and Dakshin Kannada district. My friends from there are here in the and worked on those hills. Then came Kerala, and my contacts with Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, I mentioned N.K. Prasad. So in that context with the hills of Kerala. So actually, from what end of the northern end of the Western Ghats to the southern end, over the years, I have walked on pretty much all over, and I have walked. It's not that I have driven around in jeeps or done, as they say, roadside ecology, where you just get down and see you walk at the most 100 meters. I have walked all over, and I have Richard. I don't want to go into that. Been terrorized by elephants and had been forced to spend the night up a tree to escape elephants. So I have been all over. Actually, on those hills, thoroughly enjoyed them from one end to the other. And of course, other hills also, as I mentioned, of Karwal and then Manipur. Actually, I don't want to go into detail, but the Manipur Meitei and Kuki conflict, which is so much in the news today. One of my students who was a Meitei from the valley, Natpar Shah, he did a PhD thesis in one of the Kuki villages. So I have stayed both with the Meiteis in the valley and with Natpar, of course, in the hills in the Kuki villages. So all of that, the hills and especially the Western Ghats have been really what I have genuinely enjoyed walking along, learning about them, seeing them.
So, Madhav described himself as a good Maharashtrian. Some of us think he's a better Kannadiga. We think you're a better Kannadiga. Good Maharashtrian, but by the way, we also think that Bhimsen Joshi. We're not giving Madhav, we're not giving.
See, I spent 33 years in Karnataka. And when I started, and with actually great encouragement from Satish Dhawan. He was not any kind of narrow thinking person. So he said, all right, we hired you as a mathematical biologist, you continue working in that area, which I managed. But if you want, you do field work as you wish, where you wish, all over. Then I decided that I will enjoy doing that, and there is no point to going back to Maharashtra, do field work in the Western Ghats, both of Karnataka and then bordering Nilgiris, Tamil Nadu, and then Wayanad, Kerala, all that. But I must learn the language of the people, and it became essential because when I started working in Bandipur, there were wild elephants, and we would go out in the forest trying to understand what was going on. And we had these two tribal guides, Mara and Bopa, who had tremendous knowledge of the wild track or whatever was going on in that area, and they would sense elephants are there, and maybe sometimes the elephants would unexpectedly start coming towards us, and they would shout, "Aane bantu, odbeku." Elephants are coming, run. So then, of course, I had to quickly pick up Kannada. Save my life. I said, this is good, Gadgil, but I was seriously learning. So within a year or so, I was quite fluent, and I am proud to say that when the Biodiversity Act was being discussed, the Kerala Legislative Assembly, full assembly, invited me to give them a exposition of Biodiversity Act. So in flawless Kannada, I talked for 40 minutes, and they asked questions, and I answered. So, but that had, of course, great advantages, because they were utterly convinced that I was a Kannadiga. Which meant that, in our Indian Institute of Science, of course, there are all these regionalism things. So the lower staff used to complain. Those Tamilians, they are trusted to us. We Kannadigas must stand up to them. Right? If I have Kannadiga to our lower staff in the Indian Institute of Science, then I had very good, of course, students like Sumar and very good Tamilians. I had no idea of picking one side or the other, but I was happy that they completely accepted that I was a Kannadiga.
You know, this has been for me a great privilege and incredibly moving, educative, illuminating to speak with my esteemed friend and collaborator. And unfortunately, we have to end. But before we end, if I may take the privilege of, especially for the young people in this room, and there are lots of them, conveying two pieces of advice I have got from the Gadgils when I was young. In the year 1986, I mean, about 17, 18 years after the two of them, my wife went to Yale on a graduate scholarship, and I followed her on a postdoc. And I went to see Madhav and Sulochana at the IISc, saying, Sushanta is the one I am going. And Sulochana gave me this piece of advice. She may have forgotten. She said, enjoy yourself, it's a great university, you'll have a wonderful time. But don't have your kids there. Oh. Come back and have your kids. Don't give them that unfair advantage of an American passport. If have them here, if later they want to go, that's their business. And I think that's the advice of not just pragmatism, it's patriotism. And I must say I followed it. My kids may still go abroad, but I didn't give them an unfair advantage in it. The other piece of advice, which I think Sulochana, I don't know, they've forgotten. The other came from Madhav. So I came back from Yale after a year and a half teaching there, and I joined the Center of Ecological Sciences. And a month after I came back from Yale, I got an invitation for a conference. And I thought I'd go back. My friends are there. There's Sterling Library at Yale. There's Stan Bookshop in New York. So I went to Madhav, who was chair of the department. I said, Madhav, I got an invitation for this conference. I want to go. So he looked at me. He said, Ram, Are you sure you want to go? You are young, you're articulate, you speak good English, you're brown skinned, you work on a fashionable topic called environment, you'll get hundreds of invitations. You have to learn which to accept and which to not accept, because otherwise you'll be traveling the world for the rest of your life and you'll do no serious work. And I think that's extraordinary, and I can't do that advice. So, I think all of you here, because I have had contemporaries who accept every invitation they get. And the way he put it, he said, it's a fashionable field, environment, sociology, Kipko movement, you're a smart fellow, you're from Zestivans, you know how to tell good stories. You get lots and lots of invitations. If you go to one conference, you get the next and the next. And I think, this is the kind of groundedness that the two of them have had. I think a kind of a exemplary focus on their work, on their scholarship, and it's a kind of a, it's a very quiet, unself-conscious thing. I think it's been a great privilege for me to be here today at the Guha Institute. And please buy the book in one or more languages, and you'll find very remarkable and inspirational stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an extraordinary interview of two intellectual people who have spent a lifetime together in their own fields and have exemplary records of contributions to scientific and history. Thank you so much, Ram, Guha and Madhav. I now invite Dr. Vijay Kelkar to give us concluding remarks.
My good friend and distinguished historian, Professor Ramchandra Guha, Gadgil, the director of Guha Institute, Dr. Gadgil, and to so many Professor Madhav, distinguished guests and friends. In the morning when I was trying to prepare my remarks, Lata warned me that after the conversation, be very brief. So, you will not get tomatoes from the audience. But Madhav is really mix of affection, pride, and admiration that I talked today about. I've known Madhav since our school days. We went to same school. He was 1 year junior in school. 1 year junior is quite a difference. So he was 1 year junior to me in school, but he was a star even then. He won many medals for school. He was known for athletics. He was, I think, gold medal every year he got an item, if I remember correctly. And he also got other laurels also. And my admiration for him is really profound scientific contribution to a completely new field and discipline in India. He contributed both knowledge and praxis. India's number of environment policies are really shaped by him in both ways, by providing knowledge base and providing leadership. In formulating, we just heard from Gurudas, the biodiversity convention was really crafted by him. This book, I would recommend you to all to read. In fact, my request to Professor Radade is to make it as a part of a reading list to every student, because it's a very good book on method of science. How do you conduct research? And so that is also extremely valuable. Of course, we have many good students. We already mentioned about their marriage. So there are many other very fascinating stories, details about him. And also about life. And lastly, that I said affection, admiration, now pride, is, and we all appreciated that he accepted the Pune International Centre's invitation to become honorary member. So we are an honorary member of Pune International Center. And as a tribute to him, we just have a now new campus. We are inaugurating new campus, not too far from here. As our attempt at tribute of one of our honorary members. Madhav, I don't know if I mentioned to you or not, but our landscape will be designed by your disciple Varsha, when you know she's here or not. But it's completely inspired by your work on preservation of the flora and fauna of Western Ghats as a head. So that's what our entire landscape will be done, and it's really tribute by us. And finally, I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Guha to agree to come here and for this launch and have us totally mesmerizing conversation. We should have gone on a couple of hours, I think. But the next time onwards, we can't have short programs. Too short. And I want to also mention finally Professor Dr. Subha Gadgil for her remarkable contribution, which she's made. I mean, it comes out in the book with several places. So I thought I would take this opportunity to give my tribute and appreciation. So once again, Madhav, wish you a very long and happy life. I think there are more books to come. And we were just discussing the having tea. I was admiring his memory, sharp memory, and how to remember, and he has been meticulously keeping notes. He told me from whom we learned. But he was lamenting, Vijay stage these days, a couple of times I missed remembering names. So I gave him the good news. I said, Madhav, at our age, if you know that I forgot, it's a good thing.
Thank you so much. I now request Dr. Ganade to hand over a token of appreciation to all three of them. Professor Madhav Gadgil. This is a coffee table book authored by M.K. Gandhi on Gopal Krishna Gokhale, my political guru. And this is a set of books from the Pune International Center. And Dr. Vijay. Thank you so much. There are just two announcements which I wish to make. One is that copies of all languages are available right now. As you go out, you will see that they are being available. Copies will be signed by Professor Madhav Gadgil. So in case anyone wants to have a signature, please queue up for it. I'm sure there'll be a big queue for it. We'll arrange for that. We'll arrange for where you'll sit. That is the first announcement. And second is that we are having an interaction with Professor Ram Guha tomorrow for the faculty and the research staff, as well as students of Gokhale Institute only. It's at 11 a.m. tomorrow here in Gokhale Institute. So that's for the students, not for the others. Thank you so much for being here and in an overwhelming crowd for this. Thank you.